Welcome to this tutorial. My name is Ian and I will be taking you through the tutorial. So in this tutorial we're going to continue looking at our graphs. In the previous tutorial we looked at how we could create some basic column, line and pie graphs. But what if you want a little bit more sophistication? What if you want a histogram, or you want a box plot? Or maybe you want to see a violin plot or a scatter plot or even a hex bin. So we're going to be covering all of these graphs in this tutorial. We're going to be looking at how we can get ChatGPT to do that for us. Now please remember, you do need the paid version of ChatGPT to be able to follow along with this. Please also remember to like and subscribe to our channel. Keep up to date with all the latest content that we have. But let's jump into the tutorial itself. I will see you there. Welcome to this tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to be looking at some more advanced visualizations that we could do with ChatGPT. In the previous tutorial we looked at our column graph, our line graph and our pie graph, which are quite traditional graphs. This one we're going to look at a few more advanced examples. So we're going to start with our sales data. If you've been watching the other tutorials, you're probably quite familiar with this data by now. And we're basically going to just tell it to load this file of data, and I'm going to just list fields. If you haven't seen our previous tutorials, basically the data that we're working with, as I say, is sales data. It's about 8,399 rows of data of sales data that we're using. And in this tutorial, we're going to be focused really on the sales field. So hopefully just now we should see that a list of fields will be shown. There we go. And the sales field you'll see is there. So what I'm interested to know in this tutorial is, what is the distribution and the range of these sales values? So how are these sales values actually distributed? So the first question I want to know is, in terms of the values, do I have a lot of low values or a lot of medium values or a lot of high values? What is the distribution of the number of sales that happen? And the way we can do that is through a histogram. So basically, I'm going to tell this to create a histogram graph. Well, just create a histogram of the sales field. So we'll just start with that. We'll get ChatGPT to do that. So there we go. There's our histogram. Now, basically what this is showing me is that when it looks at groupings here, it's basically got a large amount of transactions. So this is frequency. This is number of transactions, 7,000. Basically all low in value. So basically there you can see it tapers off, and we've actually got quite high values here, but very few transactions for them. So what I could do is I could actually look at this in a bit more detail, and we could maybe just look at this part here. So let's say we want to update the graph, and I'm going to tell it to exclude the values over $5,000, and I'm going to tell it to create groupings. So basically what this has done here is it's created a grouping. It's gone from 0 to an amount, and it's done the grouping there. So I'm going to tell it to actually create groupings. Now it's also, this is often called bins. So we're going to tell it to create groupings of $500 each. So let's add that in there. So now we can actually see this is 0 to $500, 500 to $1,000. And again, we can see there's over 4,000 transactions that have happened in the 0 to $500. So that's basically what a histogram is doing, is it's showing us the number of transactions or the number of rows in your data set that basically are within that grouping. Now I could go into a bit more analysis here. I could maybe look at that 0 to $500 in a bit more detail, see where the real breakdowns are. I could maybe look at it by different product categories or by different regions, for example. So a lot of analysis that I could continue with. But what I'm going to move on to is a different type of graph here. We're going to look at a box plot. So a box plot shows me the data in a different way. It shows me the distribution of the data in terms of percentiles. So it's going to show me where the 25% of values are, where 50% of values are, where 75% of values are. So we're going to move on. We're going to tell it to create a box plot for sales. And I am going to tell it just to exclude the values over 5,000. As I say, we've got quite a wide range of higher values, but let's keep it within the 5,000 range. Okay, so there we go. We can see that that's come back pretty quickly. And basically what a box plot's doing is it's showing you the values with these lines. Now, this green is normally about 50% of your values, and basically this would be the 50% between your 25% of values and your 75% of values. But if we wanted a bit more detailed breakdown of this, why don't we ask ChatGPT to do it for us? So I'm going to say create a summary from the data in the graph. And it said give us a bit of an overview. Okay, so as you can see, it's telling us now, well, actually, let's wait for it to finish typing this out, and then we'll have a look at the values that it's showing. Okay, so there we go. It's given us quite a nice overview. So basically, it's telling us the medium or the middle value for the sales appears to be just under 1,000. Basically, in terms of your quartiles, it's telling us that around 25% of the values are around $300. So 25% of our sales values happen around $300. If we go up to $1,800, then 75% of our sales values happen within that. So basically, it's now obviously we've excluded the values. So in terms of the overall range, we've kept it down to 5,000. Now, what you can also have is that box plot doesn't include outliers, so you can have outliers that have been shown. But as you can see, very easy to be able to get an overview of a box plot plus an explanation of what's happening. So a really good graph to be having a look at. Okay, another type of one that gives us an understanding of distribution and how that distribution happens is called a violin plot. So let's say we want to create a violin plot. And we're going to say for sales. And again, I'm going to exclude values over the $5,000 mark again. So let's create that violin plot and have a look at it. Okay, so there we go. Now you start to see that we get an understanding of how much of the values is happening between those values. So basically, again, as you can see, the vast majority of the values are in this sort of $0 and less than $500 range over here. So basically, you'll see now that it's giving us indications of where the upper limits are, the middle limits, and the lower limits are. And then we got, transactions that happen basically further on. One of the things that I do want to highlight here, as you start looking at these different types of graphs, you're going to see that we're bringing together different forms of analysis into one here. So with this violin plot, we're getting an understanding of the frequency, the number of the values, but then also the distribution. You can actually tell this to look at it. So we could say update the graph to include product category. So with this now, hopefully we should get 3 different violin plots. And there we go, we do. So basically this is giving us an overview. And what you can see quite clearly from the difference here is that office supplies, for example, have a lot of the low values and then it tapers off pretty quickly. It doesn't have many with the higher values here. Whereas furniture, for example, has much more transactions happening at the higher values. Technology as well, as you can see, you do have more higher ones. So here, using this violin plot does give you a really nice visual representation of what's happening with that distribution and the range of the data that you're looking at. Again, if you wanted to, you could ask ChatGPT to give you further explanations around this. Now, the next one that I want to move on to is called a scatter plot. So a scatter plot is about plotting your X and Y axes. Now, one of the things that we might want to do here is we might want to look at how does our values of sales and profit compare to each other. So let's say we wanted to create a scatter plot. And we're going to say for sales and profit. Okay, so there we go. Now what it's showing me is basically that at the sales values, and again, we know we got a lot of values that are around this 0. So basically it's showing me that over here for sales, it should be a bit concerning, but under the 0 is basically we got negative profit. And as you can see, quite a lot of sales are actually happening in this area over here that are negative profit. Now what we should have here is like basically a 45-degree line going up. So basically from 0 here, 45. As sales goes up, profit should go up. And this would be normally the sort of trajectory that we would see. This type of thing where you've got a high sales value, but you've got very little profit would be something that you might want to look at in more detail. But again, it's a good start here to have a look and see what's going on. But you might want to say that you want to update this and say, let's see again from our product category. And we'll just say as a legend. And there we go. Now, if you wanted to look at this in more detail now, you've now got a legend showing the product categories. And what you can see is sort of the X's, the technologies seem to be the ones that have quite a lot more of the negative profit. So this would be something that you might want to do a little bit more analysis around, trying to understand what that is. You've seen before also in the previous tutorials, we can download these images, just tell the system, download the image, and it will basically create a link and you can download these files. Okay, we are going to move on with our scatter plot, and we're going to finish off with just another type of visualization to show you. It's called a hex bin. So basically what a hex bin does is it's going to create little hexagons for us in terms of displaying the data. So I'm going to say create a hex bin, and we're going to say displaying sales and profit again. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to exclude some values. Actually, let's just create one first of all. Create a hex bin displaying sales and profit, just so you can see the overview of this. What we are going to see is that there's a density around this. So it's going to show us the number of transactions that happen. So as we can see here, that basically you got your scales of the number of transactions that are happening. And you can see with our sales figure and our profit, the majority of the transactions are really happening, as we know, in this very low end. So what you could do here is you could try and just bring it into a specific area. So let's say we wanted to update the graph, exclude sales over, let's say $1,000, and profit, let's say you just say exclude sales over $1,000. Okay, so there we go now. So basically you can see now our sales has been limited to $1,000, and this is basically showing us then the profit profile. And again, we can see the density is really in this area here, where the values on the profit are pretty low for these lower end profits. You can see also that we do tend to, even with these values that are low in sales, tend to be having negative profits around here. So that would really give you a good indication of where you should be doing some further analysis and looking into this a bit further. But in this tutorial, hopefully you've seen we've got some more advanced types of visualizations we can use. I'm going to conclude the tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.